Chapter 7, Part B, or the second half of Chapter 7. This is day 1. And so I'd like you to pause the video and try these warm-up questions just to kind of get a reminder of how addition and multiplication kind of work with variables. Then restart the video and make sure you got them correct. Okay, so the first one is -1 or just -b. Remember, when you're adding and subtracting, you can only add or subtract like terms, which are the exact same variable to the exact same power. That's not true when you're multiplying, because when you're multiplying in number 2, you're just multiplying everything together. So the 5 times the -7 is -35, and then you have a times b. In question number 3, what they're trying to help you understand is that you are taking 4m and you're adding it to this whole quantity. But again, only like terms can be added together, so only the 4m can be added with the -1m. So your answer here would be 3m and then plus 7. The 7 can't be combined with anything else. And then again, this is what we were working on in the first part of chapter 7. This is just all multiplication. So this would become 4x to the third y. And if you decide to try the challenge question, what makes this one a little bit more challenging is that now you are taking this and you're subtracting this whole quantity. So it means you have to subtract the 4j and you have to subtract -6k from 5j minus 7k. And so basically, again, you look for like terms. But remember, subtracting a negative is adding the opposite. So now I can add the 5j and the -4j to get 1j, and I can add the -7k and the 6k together to get -1k. So that would be your answer. And we're going to work on more subtracting and adding tomorrow. But today we're going to do some terminology, and this stuff is really not that difficult if you just write all these things down and memorize these sort of vocabulary terms and definitions. So we're going to name a polynomial by the number of terms it has. We're going to give the degree of the polynomial. We're going to put it in standard form. And we're going to classify according to its degree. We're not going to add and subtract today, so I'm just going to kind of cross that one out. Okay, so if you think of some words that start with these prefixes, okay, you could write some down, but like, for example, bicycle and tricycle, or triangle, okay? So if you think about words that start with bi and tri, you might think of 2 wheels, 3 wheels, okay? 3 sides in a triangle. Mono has to do with 1, okay? So monotone is just one tone. Doesn't have any inflection of higher or lower sounds. And poly is really many. You may have heard of the word polyester, and that is many different fabrics. So our first piece starts here with defining a monomial. Okay, so a monomial right here, that's what we're defining. A monomial is a number, a variable, or a product. Remember, product is times, a product of a number and variable or variables. And in other words, it is one term. Okay, so we talked about that here. One term, mono. So now what do you think a binomial, trinomial, and polynomial mean? Well, hopefully, taking what we kind of did with those prefixes, you would understand that polynomials here are named by the number of terms they have. So a monomial is 1 term. A binomial is 2 terms. A trinomial, 3 terms, and a polynomial is many, or 4 or more terms. So when we look at these examples that follow, we're going to have to pick out the number of terms we have. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But before we go any further, let's do one more term or definition, and that is the degree. The degree of a polynomial is the highest exponent power. So when we look at these 2 examples, okay, the terms are separated by addition and subtraction. So 9 is a term. Then we're adding a different term, x, and then we're subtracting negative 4x squared. So we have 3 terms here. 1, 2, 3. It's a number, it's a variable, or it's numbers and variables multiplied together. So this has 3 terms. So it's called a trinomial. Okay, look at the next one. How many terms? See if you can stop the video for a second and count the terms. So the terms you have are 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have 4 terms. So you have a polynomial. So now let's work on the degree. The degree is the highest exponent power. The highest exponent power you have here is 2, so we say that this is degree number 2, or degree 2. The highest exponent power you have in the second example is 3, so this would be degree 3. All right, we have a little bit more to talk about as far as terminology and defining and classifying polynomials. And the next thing we're going to talk about is the leading coefficient. So the leading coefficient of a polynomial is the number that's in front of the variable with the highest exponent power. Okay, so the leading coefficient is going to be the number that's in front of the highest exponent power. So if we go back here, okay, the highest exponent power in the example number 2 is 3, and the leading coefficient is 1. Okay, so here in the first example, our leading coefficient would be 4. But actually, both of those are negatives, and you'll see why you won't really get that mixed up, because when we pick out the leading coefficient, we're going to pick it out when it's in standard form. And standard form of a polynomial is when the terms are written in the order from the highest exponent power to the smallest exponent power. And so when it's in the highest exponent power, you're going to see the leading coefficient is in the lead. So we're going to go back here and we're going to start by talking about naming the polynomial by the number of terms it has. Okay, so how many terms, here let's do that in another color here. So name the polynomial by the number of terms it has. Let's do that first. Number 3, how many terms does it have? It has 1, 2. So 2 terms, it's called a binomial. Okay, we're going to give the degree. The degree is the highest exponent power. Well, the exponent that you have here is 1. So this would be degree 1. In standard form, you have the highest exponent power to the smallest. And this one is in standard form because you have x to the first, and this is really like having x to the 0. So it's in standard form, and so the leading coefficient is the one that's in the lead. So in this case, the leading coefficient is 4. Okay? All right. Now, let's look at number 4 together. Again, let's go back to the beginning. How many terms does this have? 1, 2, 3. 3 terms, it's a trinomial. What is the highest degree? What is the highest exponent power? This is degree 3, this is degree 1, so 3 is the highest exponent power, so we say that this is degree 3. Okay, finally, the next thing we need to do is write it in standard form. In standard form, the highest exponent power is first, which we already have, but then we need to put the x to the first power next. And we don't need that 1, it's just there for clarity. And then finally, we have the minus 7. Remember, whatever sign, addition or subtraction, it goes with the number that it follows. So now we have it in standard form, and so it's easy to see that our leading coefficient here is 3. Okay, your turn. Okay, I'd like you to try 5, 6, and 7. Pause the video, try those 3 questions, then restart the video for the explanations and the answers. Okay, we have 4 terms, so we have a polynomial. Okay, we have the highest degree power here is 4. So this is degree 4. So now when we have to put it in order for standard form, that power has to come first. So we would have 3x to the 4th, then we'd have the 5x squared, then we'd have the negative 2x, and then we'd have minus 6. So we have x to the 4th, 2nd, 1st, and no x's. So now it's in standard form. And finally, the leading coefficient here that we have is 3. Okay, now the next one is a monomial because there's only one term. Those terms are multiplied together, so that's a one term, monomial, okay? The degree is 1. There's an understood 1 there, so this is degree 1. It's in standard form, and so the leading coefficient is 4. Okay, and it's already in standard form. Same with the next one. When you only have one term, it's in standard form. All right, and so the next one again only has one term. So it's a monomial. And its degree is 0. A lot of students don't get that at first, but remember, you could have x to the 0 power there because that's just 1. So there's no x's there, 0 x's. So it's degree 0. And the leading coefficient is really negative 31. And there it's already in standard form. All right, so that's what we're working on in this first lesson, is naming things, classifying things, etc. We have one more thing to talk about, and that's classifying a polynomial according to its degree. So right now what we did over here is we gave the degree as a number. Now once we know what that number is, it has a special name. And degree 0 is called constant. That's just your plain old numbers. Degree 1 is linear. So if you remember, we had equations like y equals 1/2 x minus 3, those were linear equations, and those are degree 1. Those are linear. Okay, degree 2 are called quadratics. So we call that a quadratic. And degree 3, cubic. This is actually the next thing we are going to study is quadratics. So now we're just classifying by degree. Degree is the highest exponent power. So we have degree 2 here, which is called quadratic. Okay, again, a tricky one because this is degree 0. There are no variables. So this is degree 0, so it is constant. And you try the last one here. Degree 1 is linear. Okay, so that is the end of our first day of the second half of chapter 7.